One morning, perhaps Lazarus' friends arrived and found him unresponsive, cold, still. A few tears would be shed, a simple prayer offered. A few mourners would perhaps accompany the body as it was unceremonially cast into a shallow, unmarked grave. The dogs might miss him at the rich man's gate, but if the rich man noticed he was gone, he would have thought, good riddance. Perhaps he's found another place to beg, or perhaps he's died and decreased the surplus population. But picture the rich man taking ill. Physicians would be summoned, and when they couldn't help, others would be called. No expense would be spared. The family would all gather, and as he breathed his last, there would be great lamentation. There would be paid mourners at the gate and weeping in the streets. A great procession would no doubt carry the man of wealth and influence to a fine sepulchre, which had perhaps already been prepared for his family, where his name would be carved in stone for generations to remember. Now, I ask you, which death would you prefer? But wait a minute. We haven't heard the whole story. In fact, as touching the spiritual realities, we haven't heard the story at all. Verse 22. So it was that the beggar died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried, and being in torments in Hades, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. Let me ask you, who had the finer funeral procession after all? Lazarus died and he was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. That is, into paradise with the believers who had gone before. One would think that one angel would be sufficient to usher a soul into the presence of God. Why would God send angels other than to honor with a procession this child's homecoming? The rich man also died. He was buried, but his end was quite different from that of Lazarus. He found himself in torments in Hades, that is, in what we commonly call hell. Now, what comfort do you suppose the rich man took then in that great procession and the crowd of mourners around his funeral bier, if he was even aware of it? What comfort in the fine sepulchre which would soon bear his name? What pleasure in the thought of his once fine clothes and sumptuous meal? Riches profit not in the day of wrath, Proverbs 11:4. Riches profit not in the day of wrath. He who trusts in his riches shall fall, Proverbs 11:28. Remember Psalm 73, a passage Pastor Barry preached from last month. I was envious at the foolish, the psalmist says, when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Their eyes bulge with abundance. They have more than heart could wish. When I thought how to understand this, it was too painful for me. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I understood their end. Surely you set them in slippery places. You cast them down to destruction. Oh, how they are brought to desolation as in a moment. They are utterly consumed with terrors as a dream when one awakes.